So I'm Travis Nielsen. I'm Rook lead maintainer, and I work for the IBM storage team since our team was just moved over from Red Hat. So happy to be here with you today in person for the first time in, 4 years. Just glad to be here. So the purpose of my talk really is today to just give an intro about what Rook is, why would you would want to deploy it. And fundamentally, the question is, if you have Kubernetes, if you need to deploy Kubernetes, if you're looking at Kubernetes, why would you want to deploy Ceph inside of it? Okay. So first of all, anybody who's using Kubernetes, Kubernetes itself was not designed for storage. It's designed for distributed apps, but you need storage as soon as you deploy an app, right? And traditionally, the storage will be external to Kubernetes. If you're running in the cloud, you can use cloud provider storage, but those have limitations. It's not available in your own data center. So if you need a storage platform, of course, we're all here at Cephalocon. We know which platform to trust, right? So we need Ceph in Kubernetes as well. Of course, we all know Ceph has all the enterprise deployments. It's got all the 3 types of storage, and this is why I was not with the Ceph team when I originally started on this project with someone else. We were at a different company looking at what platform, what do we take a bet with Kubernetes. We wanted to do things in a Kubernetes native way. We wanted to do it full integration, the Kubernetes way with desired state, and so this is where we started. So I guess the question is, if you're already running Kubernetes, let's turn this question around. Why wouldn't you deploy Ceph with it? Why wouldn't you deploy it with the same kind of desired state management that you're already using for your other applications? You want to just give Kubernetes your settings essentially, and let the automation happen behind the scenes. Well, Ceph itself was not, of course, designed for running in Kubernetes. It was created long before Kubernetes was a big thing, but Ceph had its other ways of being deployed. Ceph Ansible, other tools. And containerized environments really starting out. This is about 6-7 years ago when we started looking at essentially Rook. And Kubernetes has all these specific patterns to follow for desired state. It's not just run some scripts and deploy Ceph, or run some scripts and do things. You want to say, hey, I want this state. I want Ceph to be running, and that's my state. And that's where Rook was born, for its purpose, its sole purpose being to deploy Ceph for Kubernetes. Yes, so we did some magic. We did things in the way Kubernetes does it, and the force was strong with Rook and Ceph together. All right, so what is Rook? So Rook is what I call the management layer for running Ceph. It's similar to Ceph ADM. Rook came before Ceph ADM. Similar to Ceph Ansible, it's going to be in charge of deploying Ceph. It is implemented with an operator. So operator is a common Kubernetes pattern where it provides the automation for applying this desired state. And then the custom resource definitions are the way that you define that state. This is how you define how you want to run Ceph in the data center. You can say, I want to run Ceph backed by these devices, and I want monitoring enabled. I want this many mons, I want this many OSDs. Anyway, there's lots of ways to configure Ceph. Most of you probably know Ceph itself is very configurable, and more configurable than you'd probably like it to be sometimes. But we've tried to simplify this in a way that's still flexible with the CRDs. So you may ask then, well, is it ready for production? Well, so in December 2018, so that's over 4 years ago, we did declare Ceph as stable with Rook, and we have a lot of clusters in production. Now I do mostly work upstream with the community running the project, and so I don't really know how many people are out there, but there are clusters with hundreds of nodes, multiple petabytes of capacity. Last week I was talking with one of our longtime users who's been with the project for over 5 years. Dmitry Mishin from doing some work with University of California and National Science Foundation funding. Anyway, he was saying that he's got number of clusters. Well, I've got some data in another slide, but just to show how many, how you can run things in production. And so he says, this is from Dimitri, Rook significantly simplifies our persistent storage needs in Kubernetes by automating all Ceph setup, monitoring, and config management. And then with Rook, adding and using a new Ceph cluster requires almost no effort and becomes a trivial task, which is indicated by the number of Ceph clusters we have. So basically he's saying, hey, deploying Rook the first time isn't going to be a trivial task, maybe as much as if you've already run several, okay, I've figured out the configuration I need. I can, basically, have it in my software management in GitHub or whatever. And then the next cluster I deploy is going to be trivial because it's just make this cluster happen in, deploy Ceph, make it look like this in my new Kubernetes cluster. So here's just a quick glance of his data. Again, there are lots more users, and I just happened to be talking to him last week. So he has, his biggest cluster is 3 petabytes with 237 OSDs. And then there were a number of clusters just spread across the world. Just to give a data point and he's been running these clusters in production for several years with, again, this collaboration project across multiple university systems doing their research. So a few more stats since it's upstream. Again, we don't know all the details, but we are CNCF graduated. So CNCF is the foundation behind Kubernetes, essentially, and all the projects there. So almost 3 years now since we've graduated. Close to 11,000 GitHub stars. On Docker Hub, it tells us how many container downloads there are, 280 million downloads. On the GitHub project, we have 400 plus contributors, and 1.11 is our latest release. So with the project, kind of our philosophy is we want to do what's right for the community first. Even before I joined Red Hat about 5 years ago after the project started, just that we had that philosophy there. And I've appreciated that philosophy with the Ceph team. It's just community is always first. Same license as Ceph, open as Apache 2.0. And, we hope for community feedback. We want to do the right thing. We do approximately quarterly or every 4 or 5 months minor releases. It kind of is in sync with the Kubernetes releases, which is, I think they're about 3 times a year is their goal. So we'll kind of match that. It tends to work well, I think, on that cadence as far as the management platform. I know with Ceph, the data platform, they're on a different cadence about annually. And so you can choose actually to update your management stack with Rook separately from your data path with Ceph. And those are independent. We do have maintainers on Rook from 4 companies, and I believe 3 of the 4 are represented here. So I'm with IBM. If you see, is Sertu over here with Saibosu? Maybe he's not in the room. And then a couple from Core, and then Upbound. All right, so where can you deploy Rook with Ceph? Basically, anywhere you can deploy Kubernetes, you can deploy Rook with Ceph. If you're on a bare metal environment, your own data center, you can consume whatever raw devices you have on your bare metal nodes. You can also choose to use local PVs if you really want to go full in on the Kubernetes patterns to back your OSDs and mons by the local PVs. If you're in a cloud environment, say you're running an AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, any of those, Rook can consume the raw devices that are on ephemeral nodes, or you can back them by cloud provider PVs. For example, back the OSDs by EBS volumes. And with the patterns we have in place with the CRDs, it's just simple to get a cluster up and running. And the purpose of that, at first when we started down that path, it's like, well, is it useful in cloud environments? Why would people do that? Well, people pretty early on told us, well, there are limitations with the cloud providers. You can only have a certain number of PVs per node and things. So with the software-defined storage, of course, you overcome those limits of how many volumes per node, whether you can have data replicated across AZs, Those are a couple of the most important ones. And then controlling costs across AZs, a few things like that. How are we doing on time? All right. Just real quick, architecturally, again, Rook is the management layer. The Ceph, there's a CSI driver that is CSI is the way you really mount any storage in Kubernetes. So that just follows the patterns for any storage that's plugging into Kubernetes. And then Ceph is purely the data layer. Once you've got your volumes mounted, then it's straight to the data layer with Ceph. There are a number of talks at Cephalocon here today, and mostly today, one tomorrow. Just hope you can make it to those. Right after this one, Parth will be talking about specifically external Ceph clusters. So if you already have Ceph running with Ceph ADM or whatnot, you can connect a Kubernetes cluster to it. And then, anyway, a few others on read affinity, production grade best practices, observability, and then troubleshooting. Looking forward to that. Here's a few links for the community, and I hope to hear from you on Slack, GitHub issues, and I think that brings us to the end. So thanks. Do we have a minute for questions? Maybe just a quick minute. Oh, it got dark out there all of a sudden. Yes, I'll be at KubeCon. There'll be on Wednesday, we have a talk at KubeCon. So if you're there, we'll have a booth at KubeCon too. Feel free to stop by there. Mm-hmm. All right, we'll call it good then. Thanks, everyone.